Federico, it's time for another App Stories. This episode is brought to you by Clean My Mac X, Fitness Plus from Fun Media, and iMazing. How are you today, Mr. Fetici?
Hello, John. I am good. It's fun to be back doing normal things for Mac Stories and for the club and for App Stories. I know that you're still busy working on your macOS Monterey review. How's that going, John?
It's actually going better than it was a week ago. I'm actually working on it regularly now, so that's good. I do have this constant source of stress over my head as things like Numbers, Pages, and Keynote got updated recently and said that they only work with Monterey, which tells me that it's very, very close, and I've got a lot of work to do yet. But I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I'm going to just keep working as hard as I can, and I'm hoping to be there day one, but we'll see. I'm not gonna rush it, is what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna get it right. So,
okay, that's good to hear.
Yeah,
that's good to hear. So, one of the things that we've been doing as I was catching up once I was done with the iOS and iPadOS 15 review, and also I was trying to sort of clean up my iPhone, remove a lot of betas, and get some sort of control over my email again. One of the things that I've been doing is I've been browsing the App Store and checking out all the things that developers have been putting out lately, especially the kinds of developers that we follow at Mac Stories and App Stories for the kinds of apps that we usually cover. And despite the lack of big, fancy, flashy features in iOS and iPadOS 15, especially because SharePlay got pulled from the initial release and it's coming out later,
right?
Developers were still able to release some pretty interesting updates for their apps on iPhone and iPad. And one category that I felt like, oh yeah, this is going to be like the category of the App Store to keep an eye on this year is Safari extensions, right? Safari web extensions coming from the Mac to iPhone and iPad. And I don't know about you, John, but I've been spending a lot of money just trying to purchase every single extension that I can find on the App Store.
Yeah, I've been doing the same. And it's interesting because it's been a while since I've been in kind of that situation. I mean, I buy apps all throughout the year, but there have been periods when there have been various innovations in iOS and iPadOS where I just buy a bunch of apps all at once. And I feel like I'm right back there again with these extensions because extensions are not new. They've been around in browsers forever, and they've been on the Mac. But on the iPhone and iPad, we haven't had that advantage. And I think it makes a big difference. And I do think this is going to not only drive adoption of extensions on iPhone and iPad, but also on the Mac, because Apple changed the way they're doing extensions on the Mac a couple of years ago, and it was pretty sleepy that first year on the Mac App Store for extensions. They've made things easier by following closer to the standards for building extensions. So things are easier on the Mac in terms of the development. But now with the opportunity to make these extensions and bring them both to iOS and iPadOS, the market is a lot bigger. So I think that there are going to be more developers doing this. And I've installed a whole bunch of them, and we ought to dig into them, I guess. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Clean My Mac X. You should be able to rely on your computer. It should be in good enough shape to get you to your goals. And it should be fast and organized to make working a dream. But that's not always the case. If you're a Mac user, you should be using Clean My Mac X from MacPaw. They're well known in the Mac community and a name you can trust to take care of your Mac. Clean My Mac X is ideal for decluttering your Mac. But what exactly does it do? Clean My Mac X does a ton of different things. It includes 49 different tools to find and delete invisible computer junk. It helps you tune up your Mac so it runs at maximum speed. It also optimizes disk space, showing you your large hidden folders. Plus, you can free up tons of space so your Mac never runs into issues with storage. And it fights Mac-specific malware and adware, protecting your computer. Clean My Mac X is also notarized by Apple, so you know it's been checked for security by Apple itself. And it really stands out on design, and it makes a difference when an app is enjoyable to use, so you'll always be discovering new ways to optimize your Mac. Get Clean My Mac X today with 5% off at macpaw.app/appstories. That discount is only valid for 2 weeks, so go right now to macpaw.app/appstories for 5% off Clean My Mac X. Our thanks to Clean My Mac X for their support of App Stories.
Yeah. So I feel like one of the categories that we're seeing now that it's popular for now and for good reason because it's pretty easy to understand is all the extensions that are related to customization of Safari. Right. So this is something that was never possible before, obviously. And I'm not talking about like, I remember when I started out with Mac Stories in 2009, and something that used to be a thing back in the day of like the original Firefox, for example, where like custom user scripts. I remember things like Grease Monkey, for example, which was a popular utility. Yeah, for Firefox to install this custom like CSS scripts to modify the browser and to modify certain websites. And now developers have gotten a lot better at making customizations, and of course the technology behind Safari extensions and Google Chrome extensions for that matter in 2021 is a lot more evolved and more powerful than old user scripts from 12 years ago.
Yes, and probably safer too, because some of those scripts you could run back in the day could do all kinds of things that there are all kinds of security holes in them, but that's less true today.
Exactly. And one of the things that we're seeing now, like we're going to talk about two of the most popular options for this subcategory of customization, but one of the popular flavors of extensions, I guess, is extensions that enable dark mode in Safari for websites that don't have a native dark mode. Right? And two popular extensions here are Noir and Dark Reader. And I guess Dark Reader is already popular on desktop, and now it comes with a mobile version, whereas Noir is a brand new iPhone and iPad extension that you can install in 15. Now, the thing to understand here is these dark modes. So, for example, websites like Mac Stories or Club Mac Stories, we support a native dark mode that detects whether you have the dark appearance set up on your device. So if you switch your iPhone, iPad, or Mac to the native dark mode, the website detects that dark mode and is able to also switch to a dark theme on the web page itself. But some websites don't do this. They always have a white background, like the New York Times, for example, because they never designed a dark version of their websites. And with Noir or Dark Reader, you can say, well, even if the website doesn't have its own dark mode, use certain colors, and you can maybe talk about the differences between these two extensions. Use certain colors to force a dark mode upon this website so that it doesn't burn my retinas when I'm reading at night and I open this website and it's got a plain white background.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, that's the use case where it's most useful too, I think. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been reading something in Reader and wanted to go out to the main article on the New York Times, for instance, and been blinded because it's so white. And I think it's worth saying too that there have been extensions on the Mac for doing this for quite a while. And I was a little skeptical about it at first on the iPhone and the iPad because some of the extensions that I had used in the past did an okay but not great job in creating a dark mode for websites. But I think both Noir and Dark Reader do an exceptionally good job. And I've been very happy with them. I think overall, I'm happiest with Noir. Noir just has one dark mode that it supports. It's its own style, and it's a great style. I think it looks terrific. And it's got a lot of optionality built into it. You can have it ignore dark, it will not apply dark mode if a site already has a dark mode turned on, like Mac Stories, for instance. Or you can override Mac Stories dark mode if you want and use the one from Noir instead. And you can carve out certain sites where it's not applied at all. And with all of that, there's a keyboard shortcut, which is really kind of interesting that you can do keyboard shortcuts for an extension inside Safari, right? So I think it's Command Option N triggers Noir, and it toggles between always on, and off for each particular website you happen to be on. So it's very easy that if you go to a site and you're like, oh, I don't really like it on this site, you can toggle it to one of the other options, turn it off or whatever, which is great. The difference with Dark Reader is Dark Reader has 16 different themes. It's got everything from kind of a pure black theme to a light gray to even kind of like Christmas colors, almost like red and green text, or a purple and orange theme. I mean, some of them are pretty wild. And so it gives you a lot of options to kind of personalize it and do it the way you want. I think I like Noir better personally just because it gives me the ability with a keyboard shortcut to switch things. That one feature makes a big difference to me. Plus the fact that I just like, even though it only has one theme, that theme I like the best of all the ones that I've seen.
Yeah, I really like Noir and like how you can, enable it for different websites or not. So that's the one that I'm using, and I'm super intrigued by the implementation of the custom keyboard shortcut. I can imagine how maybe ideally some utilities like web clippers, for example, or task managers could integrate a similar technology in the future to say, just press this hotkey in Safari to bring up the custom clipper if you want to save a web page or something. So that could be potentially interesting. This comes from developer Jeff Johnson, tweaks for Twitter. And there's also Jeff makes another extension called Stop the Madness.
Right.
But this is tweaks is more in the customization sort of category, because it disables a lot of, I don't want to say useless, but a lot of sections of the twitter.com website that maybe aren't that interesting. Things like promoted tweets and trends in the sidebar and suggestions. And, some UI elements that are maybe a little unnecessary if you want to just have a clean, sort of timeline experience when using twitter.com in Safari. I like this one. It literally is, all there is to it is it's a list of features that you can enable or disable with a bunch of checkboxes. And it works pretty well. And it makes the twitter.com website a little more tolerable when used in Safari, especially on iPad.
Now, if only we could get this for the actual native app. I'd love to get rid of promoted tweets in the native app. But, it's great to have it for the website. I don't use the Twitter website a lot, but this is maybe a reason to start using it.
Yeah. And in the customization section, I also want to mention Momentum. So Momentum is a popular custom start page experience for desktop computers and desktop browsers. So one of the kinds of extensions that you can enable in Safari, and I think we're going to see this more and more going forward, are extensions that customize the start page. So if you don't want to use Apple's default start page in Safari, you can install custom start pages. And for now, the kinds of start pages that you're going to see on the App Store are the ones that let you see your own custom photo as a visual background on the start page. Momentum is interesting because it's got that. So it features either beautiful photography curated by the Momentum team, or if you subscribe to Momentum Plus, I believe it's called, you can upload your own photos. And I did, and now I can have Ginger and Zelda, my two dogs, as background photos whenever I create a new tab in Safari, which is nice. But in addition to that visual aspect, you can also customize the start page with these custom blocks. It's sort of like build your own start page, if you will. Mm-hmm. So for example, you can have a module that is a little word clock, and it lets you see times for different cities around the world. You can have another module that is like an inspirational quote. You can have another module that is like a bunch of quick links for websites that you frequently visit. And then you can have integration with Todoist and other task managers, I believe. You can have a little task section that shows you your to-dos for the day, and you can sync those with Todoist. And I'm a Todoist user, and sure enough, I connected my account, and now Momentum shows me my tasks for the day. Now, the thing is, I feel like this kind of extension still makes more sense on desktop, especially for the kind of user who spends a lot of time in a web browser, right, and really your web browser is like your OS, if you will, especially on devices like a Chromebook, for example, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
you're spending a lot of time in Google Docs and Google Sheets, and you go to YouTube, you browse websites, you use a lot of web apps. Maybe you even use Discord or Slack in a browser. You live that browser first lifestyle. This makes sense, right? Because you're going to be opening a ton of tabs and you're going to be seeing the start page a lot. And therefore, the start page sort of acts like a launch pad for your browser. But on iOS and iPadOS, the home screen is still your main launcher, right? So I don't think like the start page is like a custom start page is gonna be that useful on iOS and iPadOS because they are not browser first platforms. But I still think it's a nice sort of modification to have.
Yeah, it is nice. I subscribed too because I wanted to see what using it would be like. And I think you're exactly right because I activated it both on my iPad Pro and on my Mac. And it is nicer on the Mac because I don't know. I think I do a lot of times have an empty browser tab open when I'm on the Mac. And when I'm on the Mac, I am using web apps a lot. I'm using things like MailChimp or I don't know, other things that we use for Mac stories. So I don't do that quite as much on the iPad, so it's not as useful there. But you can also set up things like world clocks so you can have time. So I put the time for Rome in there. You can have countdowns to various things. I have the countdown to Metroid coming out on the Switch, which is like 9 days from today as we record this.
Yeah.
And I don't know what else. There's a few other things. Oh, they have soundscapes now too, which is a subscription feature that you can play, I don't know, thunderstorms in the background or the wind or whatever it happens to be. I'm not a big fan of playing noises in the background as I work, but if you like that kind of thing, there's at least 9 or 10 different choices there that you can use.
Nice.
This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Fitness View. Fitness View is an amazing health and fitness dashboard for tracking health data and gaining valuable insights using the iPhone and Apple Watch. The Apple Watch has become a robust health and fitness device that, coupled with the iPhone, lets you track more data than ever before about your workouts and overall health. Fitness View takes that overwhelming mountain of data and makes sense of it with a beautifully designed app that helps you spot trends and measure your progress. By picking the goals that matter to you the most from the app's comprehensive list, you can create a dashboard designed just for you. Fitness View also tracks workouts, providing the most important stats at a glance with in-depth data just a tap away. Fitness View's data is available on the Apple Watch too, along with multiple watch complications that bring Fitness View's power to the face of your Apple Watch. The Watch app, the watch complications, multiple iPhone app views into your data, and its widgets provide unparalleled access and insights into every aspect of your fitness. You can even share your progress with friends and family on social media with an animated version of the activity rings. And something that you won't find in other apps, Fitness View can also export detailed reports of your fitness data as a PDF. To learn more and download Fitness View, visit fitnessview.app today. Again, to try this beautifully designed and innovative fitness tracker, go to fitnessview.app today. Our thanks to Fitness View for their support of the show.
Moving on in this list of extensions, tell me, John, about developer tools and annoyances. This is how you label this section.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a catch-all, I guess, in that it does a couple of very technical. These do very technical things. There's a category such as Achoo, which is a new extension from Christian Selig that works as a web inspector. It gives you a little pop-up showing you the HTML for a website, and you can take that. It's not really super useful to scroll around in the HTML in the pop-up, but it does have buttons that allow you to do things like share it out to a text editor or something like that, where you can actually look at it and manipulate it. You can even add it. You can actually use it too as kind of a jokey thing where you can actually edit the web page and it'll show up on the website. So you could change the name of Mac Stories to something else, call it to Apple Stories or iPad Stories or something like that. I don't know. But so that's Achu. And then there are a couple of different popular AMP killers, I'll call them. And we know that Mr. Viticci here, who was quoted in the New York Times as an opponent to AMP, which is Google's mobile web caching system that has been criticized for literally years now. I forget how that story that you were quoted in was at least 4 or 5 years ago, I think now. But these extensions really just work silently in the background, redirecting AMP pages to their canonical URLs so that you actually get to the website that you intended to get to, which shouldn't be a novel thing, but it is. And the problem with AMP is that it tends to break a lot of functionality of some websites. Plus, you get this junky AMP URL if you copy it and want to share it. There are a lot of reasons not to like AMP. I'm not a fan, but what this will do is if you do a Google search and there are AMP links on that page, you'll end up on the regular page instead of the AMP page. And if you and it will even, I think, over AMP goes a little further in that if it's a URL that if it's a URL that's an AMP URL that has an app associated with it on your device, it will take you to the device instead of the AMP page. So that might work with something like Twitter, for instance. I don't know if there are AMP Twitter links. I don't think I've run across those, but that's the kind of situation where that would work.
Yeah, and I'm using Amplosion at the moment. I need to play around with Lord Waffles in the settings of Amplosion. It's a very cute dog. Of course, Christian Selig did something extraordinary with this extension, so no surprise coming from Christian. But overamped, also very good, and I like all the settings that you can get in overamped. I want to mention Super Agent.
Okay.
This extension is changing my life for the better, John. I can tell you that living in Europe, one of the things that really ruined the web over the past few years for me is following new regulations from the European Union. All websites had to start putting up cookie consent notices. You know, those alerts that you get like at the bottom or in the middle of a page, and you get it every single time, even though you're not supposed to be getting them every time. But it feels like every time I'm going to a website, I have to agree to the cookie notice. Now, Super Agent, I don't know how, but it does the automatic clicking for you. So like Super Agent works in the background in Safari, and it accepts cookie notices on your behalf so that you don't see them, but you've agreed to the cookies. So this is not like it's hiding the cookie consent notice. It's like automatically accepting those in the background.
Right.
I don't know how it works. It's magic, but it's incredible. So if you're living, and especially if you live in Europe, I think you, in America, John, you shouldn't be getting as many as we get in Europe, but I think you're still, you do get some of them.
Yeah,
right?
we certainly don't get them like you get them in Europe. However, I have noticed that it's been an increasing problem here as well, because I think a lot of companies now are just like, oh, I'm not even going to bother figuring out what IP address this is and what part of the world it's coming from. I'm just going to give everybody cookie notices no matter where they live. And so I've seen a lot of them too. So I'm very glad to have this extension too.
Yeah. Yeah, so Super Agent, absolutely fantastic extension. And I also wanted to mention again, Stop the Madness by Jeff Johnson, saying developer tweaks for Twitter. Stop the Madness, it's like a grab bag utility of all kinds of annoyances that you can, that's why it's called Stop the Madness.
Yes, some of them are very obscure. Like I was looking through the list and I didn't even know what all of them were, but they do handle a lot of, it's some of them are things like if you've ever gone to a website, tried to copy some text and it wouldn't let you do it, that's the kind of thing that it will block, because that's a website deactivating what should be a default behavior on the web.
Yeah, there's all kinds of very obscure annoyances that this extension can stop. And for example, now finally I can copy phone numbers from Google search results because I enabled that feature in Stop the Madness. It's really good, and I recommend it if you deal with some of these websites that do all kinds of things when you cannot select text or copy text or have proper navigation. It's really well done. Yeah.
The other one I think that bothers me sometimes is sometimes websites won't let you paste into a field. Like if it's a password, for instance, and you're using one password, that drives me bananas. So I'm glad that you can deal with that too.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Moving on. Video. John, what do you have for me when it comes to video?
I've got two here. One is Pipifier, which allows you to go picture in picture with basically any video you can find on the web. This is an app that was already an app and was basically a share extension app before, either a share or action extension. But now it's completely switched over to being a Safari extension because it makes a lot more sense having it right there in the address bar. And then the second app is Vidimote, which is a little remote control for videos you find on the web. Now, this app will work with just about any video with one important exception. I tried it on things like, for instance, your iOS and iPadOS 15 review, and it worked fine. It totally worked. You could, it pops up a little window from the address bar that gives you a play pause button, backwards, forwards by an increment, speed controls, and all those kind of things. So it gives you a lot more control over a video that might not have native controls built into it. It also works on websites like YouTube, of course. But the thing about YouTube is YouTube already has most of these controls built into it. The place that it doesn't work is with embedded YouTube videos. So if you find a YouTube video embedded on Mac Stories or the Verge.
Hold that thought, because I believe I have some good news for you.
Do you?
Vidimote is getting an update. I got an email from the developer a couple of days ago. So this is excellent news. Yes. The developer Felix got in touch with me. Oh, wow. That video that you mentioned is an iframe inside of an iframe. It's like a double iframe. Double iframe all the way. But yes, Vidimote will be supporting this very peculiar use case with an upcoming update. So all kinds of videos.
Yeah.
Even iframes inside of iframes.
Well, thank you, Felix. I appreciate it. I think what you're probably referring to is the Verge video that I mentioned, because I was watching Dieter Bohn's video review of the iPhone 13 Pro and Pro Max, and they do have a very specific look, so I'm not surprised that it's some sort of strange, iframe within an iframe, because they have those big banner videos at the top of their articles, and that's what I was looking at and having trouble with.
Mm-hmm.
This episode of App Stories is brought to you by iMazing. Right now, App Stories listeners can get a special 30% off discount on iMazing, the most trusted Mac app for transferring and managing files and other data on your iPhone and iPad. iMazing has a simple, elegant UI that makes navigating everything on your devices a breeze, allowing you to preserve precious memories locked inside messages, for example. But that's not all. You can access and back up your photos, move music files back and forth to and from your devices, and back up all of your data while connected to your Mac or even wirelessly. Then when you get a new iPhone or iPad, it's incredibly simple to transfer everything over to your new device. And that's particularly relevant right now. Did you get a new iPhone 13? If so, you really owe it to yourself to take a closer look at how iMazing can make the migration process as smooth as possible. Best of all, backups and backup browsing are totally free features, which give you a great idea of what iMazing can do for you before you decide to buy. Join over 10 million users who trust and rely on iMazing today and get 30% off a fully featured version by visiting imazing.com/MacStories. Again, that URL to get this great deal, 30% off on iMazing, is imazing.com/MacStories. Our thanks to iMazing by DigiDNA for their support of the show.
All right, so moving on, I just wanted to mention our final sort of collection of multi-purpose web utilities when it comes to extensions that you should be taking a look at right now. First one, obviously, the 1Password extension. It's so incredibly good. It's so well done that it enabled me to stop using altogether the iCloud keychain on iOS and iPadOS for autofill and in general. Whenever I'm in Safari, now I just use the 1Password extension. It's fantastic. It can do, it autofills login fields, obviously, but it also autofills the one-time code fields without using the clipboard hack anymore. Meaning, if you copy something and you want to keep that text or photo in your clipboard, but then you also need to log in into a web page, the 1Password extension no longer puts that one-time code in your clipboard. It just does the autofill using the native extension. But then it can also do things like saving new logins. Like if you create an account and you have the extension enabled, it'll ask you, do you want to save this as a new login in 1Password? It's so well done. I love it. If you use 1Password, go enable the extension right now. Trust me.
It works both from the address bar and from the fill-in field, as you said. And what's neat about the address bar is it's really the full app. I mean, if you've ever used the extension on the Mac, it's very much like that. You can generate passwords. You can look up passwords from basically anything you've got stored in your vault. And the only time that it will kick you out to the app itself is certain things, like if you want to go, there'll be a button in the extension even for things like settings. And if you tap on that, it'll open up the full app and go to its settings. But all of the password data can be copied and filled and all that sort of thing right there from inside the extension. So it's probably the most complex and useful extension that I've seen so far.
Search is another extension. This one,
I love this one.
This is really good. It lets you create custom commands to search on different websites and take advantage of their own built-in search features. Like, for example, if you want to search on Amazon, all you need to do is you install Xsearch, you create a custom command for Amazon search, and then in the Safari address bar, you can just type something like AMZ, and then, I don't know, Nintendo Switch, and you click enter, and that takes you to an Amazon search for Nintendo Switch. And now you can do this with all kinds of websites that have a search feature, like Mac Stories, like Cloud Mac Stories, like Twitter, like eBay, all kinds of websites that have a search functionality. You can make a custom command in Xsearch.
Yeah, this is something that I've done forever with Alfred, because Alfred, it's very easy to set this sort of thing up. And I've always missed it when I'm on a keyboard with my iPad. And now I've got it again. So it's perfect. I mean, it's something I do all the time, especially with sites like Amazon and just Mac Stories looking for past articles, is do those kind of commands. So really happy to have this.
John, tell me about the final two, good links and card pointers, especially card pointers, because I don't think this is something that will it work for me in Italy? I'm not sure.
I am not entirely sure. It has an enormous database of credit cards that it follows. So you have to have this. This is the kind of thing that tracks the different deals you have on different credit cards. So this is particularly big in the US, where you might get 2% for buying something at the pharmacy, and 3% for buying groceries, and 5% for going out to dinner, and it'll vary from card to card. And what Card Pointers does is it's been an app for a long time, and it's had some really good widgets and other functionality built into it. But now that it has a Safari extension, if you visit, for instance, Amazon, and I happen to have an Amazon credit card, if I tap that extension, it'll show me how much I'll save on that particular website, and it'll tell you that if I'm on Amazon, the Amazon card, no real surprise there, is the best deal, but it tells you which is the best deal. So if you're a person who has multiple credit cards, so that you can maximize the cash back or whatever other travel points, whatever it happens to be, Card Pointers, the extension, will allow you to figure that out as you move across the web and purchase things on various websites. Nice. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. And then the other one is Good Links. And Good Links is an app for saving links. And it works a little bit like a Read It Later service. You can use it for that, or you can use it maybe a little bit more like DevonThink or Keep It, where you're just storing offline versions of websites for you to read later or for reference materials. And it's always had one of the better extensions for that sort of app that I've seen, because the share extension would allow, it would pre-populate with the URL and the title of the page. But then you could also do things like add tags, mark it as read or unread, and that sort of thing. Now all that exact same functionality is built into a Safari extension. And you might wonder, well, why do I want a Safari extension if I can already do this with the share extension? And it's true, you don't need both, but the share sheet has gotten so cluttered with things that I'm just glad that I can put this in my Safari extensions. And then because Safari extensions can be prioritized just the way you can prioritize and reorder the share sheet, you can pop it up to the top there and not have it in your share sheet so that you can have something else there. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do. It's a strategy I've been trying to use and organize in my iPad and iPhone, is to split things between Safari extensions and the share sheet to free up some space on both. That allows me to, use more things without having to tap as many times.
Oh, very nice. All right, so I think this makes for a good first list of Safari extensions that are available right now after a couple of weeks since the release of iOS and iPadOS 15. I'm sure that developers will come up with more, and as they do, we will continue to cover those on Mac Stories and App Stories.
We will. I'm going to give you a bonus one, Federico.
Bonus one.
Okay. OneBlocker has an extension that doesn't do a lot yet, but it does one thing that's kind of cool. If you're not a YouTube Premium subscriber, it blocks the ads on YouTube. So all you have to do is install it, and it works in the background, and you can skip all those ads. So it's pretty nice if you're a free YouTube user.
Nice. Okay.
All right, Federico. Well, that's a good place to stop, as you said. I want to thank our sponsors again for this episode. That's Clean by Mac X, Fitness Plus, and iMazing. If you want to subscribe to App Stories Plus, where we talk about all sorts of additional things as part of the pre-show, including today we talked a little bit about a very special app called Yoink that we love, macro photography, and Federico's special emulator device that he's using for playing Metroid. You can subscribe at... Which
is not a Samsung device, I can promise.
No, it isn't. You've got a whole collection of things to play games on these days. It is a little... I know. It's very hard to keep up with you. But if you want to see and hear about the latest that Federico's doing, you can listen to App Stories Plus, which you can subscribe to by going to appstories.plus. We put the episodes out a day early on Sundays, and there are no ads, too. So there's lots of extra bonus features there. Of course, you can find me and Federico over at macstories.net, too. Federico is on Twitter and Instagram, where he's at Vitici. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHWS. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.